Hi everyone, I'm Don Smith for TV36 and R. Clark Media. Today we are on location at PK Architecture here in Clark, and joining us is PK, president of PK Architecture. PK, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
You too. Pleasure to come into your great establishment here. We're going to talk everything about architecture today. So PK, tell us first, let's get a little background on yourself. How did you get involved in architecture? Were you always fascinated by buildings and drawings and things as a kid?
Yeah, it's become a passion now, but when I started, architecture is basically a combination of art and science. And science in those times, we are talking 40 years ago, in those times, if you're going for science, you either become engineers, or if you're going into art, you're becoming an artist. Engineering was too dry for me. Artistry is more imaginary. So it was a combination of both art and science, which makes architecture, very interesting for me. So it relates to people. Everyday life people. We are spending 90% of our time in a built environment, whether you're in the house or in your office. During your commute also, you're passing through the railway station. So you're always, 90% of the time, you're in a built environment, and that, how you design it, how you do, it's very important. It affects your everyday life, so it's become a passion for me, and I love what I do.
Wonderful, that's great. Yeah. So you kind of met in the middle there between the art and the science, and right. I'm sure all your clients are very happy that you met in the middle, because in this beautiful office, friends, I mean, there are so many wonderful pictures of all the different buildings that PK has designed, and just really some amazing structures. And as you said, just what you said there about the commute, folks are either driving or taking the train. I'm sure they probably passed so many of your buildings, and that's also got to be a lot of pride and proud moments for yourself that people pass these wonderful structures, and you get a sense of accomplishment.
That's right. That's a big satisfaction in there that you're doing something for the community and making their lives better. So the what do you call it? The building code says you have to public life safety and welfare. But besides that, you have to raise the quality of life for people, So it's a combination of all those things, and it's very satisfying to see people enjoying our built environments. And it just came up with an idea and how it converted into a design and construction drawings and construction administration, working with all officials and making it happen, and then people enjoying the environment. It's very satisfying.
And you mentioned something I didn't even think about. You probably spend 80, 90, 95% of your time in some sort of a building, whether it's your house or work, or if you go to the store or wherever it is that you're in some sort of a built structure
environment,
that has been designed by an architect.
Right.
So PK, let's start it off for some who may not know very much about architecture, what an architect does. Kind of give us the basic 101 as far as what an architect does for, let's say, a structure for a plan when first somebody comes in.
Yeah. So people, when they come in, what we typically ask them is to give us a wish list, because they, obviously they have something in mind that they are trying to do. If we don't know what they want to do, we have to ask them questions to figure out what they really want to do. So we ask them for a wish list. These are the things you would like to do. And then we take it from there, and there are so many regulations. Every town has a zoning ordinance. We have to make sure the building is going to fit in the zoning requirements of the township. There are building codes, building code, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. There are all those codes we have to look into and make sure everything is going to work. And of course, the design itself. We start with the concept design, get it approved from the client. Then we go to the next design development. Then we go to the next step, which becomes construction drawings. That is where all the building codes, and we have to do all the technical analysis of everything. And sometimes we use consulting engineers for those kind of specialized work. And once then we have the construction drawings, that is taken by a contractor. So the client has to select a contractor, and he takes our drawings and submits it to the township. He has to fill out several forms, with a licensed general contractor, licensed electrician, licensed plumber. They have all those forms they have to fill out, including fire, and all. The building department gives you a whole jacket that they have to fill out. So that application is along with our drawings is submitted to the township. Then the township does a review of everything. It goes they have departments, the zoning department first, then the building, plumbing, electrics. So each official has to pass off on their. They look at our drawings, they pass all the drawings, and then it's ready for construction. They give you a building permit. It's ready for construction. Then the real construction process begins, and during construction, sometimes contractors have questions, so we go and answer. Not all of the time that they require construction administration, but sometimes when they do, we are there. Personally, I just like to go there and see how things are coming up. I take pictures at every stage of development, and it's a very good history that I collect all during the whole process of construction. And sometimes the construction code official when they do the inspections, there are several inspections during the construction process. When they dig the hole, they come and inspect it. When they pour the concrete, then all the framing work, then the insulation, the sheathing, rough electric, rough plumbing, rough fire. So all of that gets inspected. After those inspections, then the final inspections happen. So after all these inspections, then they give you a certificate of occupancy. So COO is
Sure,
called,
yeah.
certificate of occupancy, and then you're ready to get into the building. Before that, you can't even use the building.
You can't even get into the building right
Yeah.
before the CO is issued. So if I'm designing here in Clark, if I'm designing a commercial building, okay, let's say I have a small piece of property and I'm looking to put up an office building and so forth. You mentioned the wish list. So I come into your office and I say, PK, okay, this is what I want. It's a 3-story building, and I want like curved glass on the outside and that kind of stuff. What are some of those things on the wish list that you need from me as the client? As if I say, okay, I want the curved glass, or I want the outside to be either brick or some sort of stone look on the front. The building has to be a certain color, that kind of stuff. What are some of the first things that you ask for from the client on that wish list?
The main thing is your requirements functionally. Like you need like so many offices. What kind of offices? Where you need a reception area. You need conference room. You need the main thing we ask is the functional requirements. Aesthetics, a lot of it depends. That's our job. We are trained to make the building beautiful and all that. And yes, sometimes clients have their likings, and we ask them, do you have certain preferences? Like, do you like a certain style of architecture? Would you prefer stone or brick, or do you have a preference, or should we let you know what might work better in this situation? And remember, a building is not an island. It's situated in the neighborhood. We have to keep in mind the context. So there are buildings around. We have to be cognizant of. That
was my next question I was going to ask you. Yeah.
Of what the architecture is around. We cannot. That's why sometimes we have to go to the zoning board for special permission, and we make sure we take pictures of the surrounding area, and we show them that our building fits in the character of the neighborhood. It's not like one in Clark, for example, we put a Manhattan-style skyscraper. It's not
Sure,
compatible.
Right.
So we have to keep that in mind, and so a lot of things are functional and aesthetics. It has to go together.
Here in New Jersey, there's so many historic areas, especially where we are here in Union County, Middlesex County, and so forth, that a lot of the buildings, let's say in the downtown areas, have certain requirements from towns that say that you need to stick within a certain guideline of the historic character. Like you said, not putting a Manhattan-type skyscraper in the middle of Clark, but kind of keeping in that general theme of what the rest of the building is, like you mentioned, is really important, that you take pictures and so forth. So after that process, I've come in, we settle on what the building eventually initially. So I guess where I'm going is that do you do sketches, like rough things on, dare I say, like cocktail napkins, that kind of thing, when I come in and say, look, this is the PK, I want the building to be 3 stories high. Like I said, I want the curved glass, I'm looking for stone. These are the couple of the features on the outside that I want my building to stand out from all the other buildings. So when you drive by, people say, wow, look at that building, that's kind of a neat building, either of its lighting of the outside or whatever the case is. So when I come in, what is one of the first things that you do? Do you do some kind of initial sketches in your head from all of your experience, and you say, well, maybe this, or?
No, those were the times when we used to do hand sketches. Like now everything is computer. And a lot of things are already, we show them ideas. We do case studies, for example. I did the whole Carteret ShopRite Mall, the facade used to be 80-year-old facades. They were so run down and they wanted upgrading. So we did the whole thing, but we did case studies. We showed them, this mall, this style, that style, and what the owner has preference for. And so we put everything together and did a couple of different options and say, okay, this is one option, another option, and then they pick and choose out of that, and then we finalize, after that.
Yeah, so it's an interesting process, and I find the creativity of anything anyone does, the stuff that myself and Bill, our photographer, does, is a creative process, and what you do is a creative process. And I'm always interested in the mind space, the mindset of how you come up with these wonderful designs for these buildings. Do you try to do something different each and every time? I know you're working with a client and their wish list and so forth, but when they kind of either give you an open slate, a blank canvas, do you say, okay, these are some of the other ones maybe I've done in the area, I don't want it to look very much like something I've done already, and just the whole creative process gets started?
You see, we have to go by, for example, a hospital should look like a hospital. An office building should look like an office building. An apartment building should look like an apartment building. So we have to keep in mind there is a certain character to each kind of building, and church, for example, they have spires. They have certain historic character. We were working on Elizabeth, the fire-burnt church. We did completely. So we had to take in mind the context. So we have to make the building look the function of that first, and then obviously we have to comply with the owner's requirements. So there are elements, for example, a hotel has a certain look, a shopping center has a certain look. So there are certain architectural elements, that we use, and we study case studies, different types of hospitals. For example, I did a thesis on my hospital. So senior citizens, they have their own requirements. So we do pick and choose. There are certain architectural elements, and then we churches, for example, they have spires, they have certain historic character, the types of windows, the doors, there are Baroque style or the different architectural styles. So we use those kind of windows. That's going to make it look like a church. So all those things we keep in mind, and we give them options based on those requirements, and they pick and choose. Yeah, we like this design or not that one.
So now with your designs, I think that's such an important thing that you said, PK, about having it look like a church and having it look like an office building.
Right.
Do you find that is some sort of response either in people's minds or what have you, that they're driving past something and they say, oh, there's the church. Like, so it's such ingrained to us that a church has to look kind of like a church, you know,
Right,
and it's not just the church doesn't look like an office building, and an office
Right.
building certainly doesn't look like a church.
Right.
You know, now in our area here in New Jersey, you know, there's a lot of different structures that are being vacated either in downtowns, let's say old banks and things like that,
Right.
that are now being turned into retail property or
Right.
restaurants. And I think you're so right about that you see an old bank, and you just know, like, that was probably a bank at some point,
Right,
you know,
exactly, yeah.
and now it's some sort of high fancy
retail,
restaurant,
yeah.
or it's a store of some
Yeah,
type.
right.
So is it that kind of mental process that, you know, we're so used to, accustomed to seeing these things?
That's the difference between, you know, a layperson designing and an architect designing, you know. So when we know it's an open space and we are converting one use into another use, so we have to make it look like that, you know. So we have to make the facade, for example. We did this in Avenel on Route 1 motel, the Hollywood Motel or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
In Avenel.
Yeah.
So it used to be just like a blank wall, you know, and the Woodbridge mayor was so happy, it turned out so well. So we made it look like a hotel kind of with symmetrical arches, and made it look like you know, all the windows were haphazardly placed.
Sure.
But if you Google it and see it, we made it look like a certain pattern. There is symmetry, there is rhythm, there is the colors, the materials, all of that comes into mind, and we make it look like, we make those changes, whether it's decorative, you know, in different styles, and make it look like that. So we have to make it change the use from this use to that use, but we have to make it look like what it's going to be used for.
And also, I'd imagine that depending on who the client is, if it's, let's say, some bigger clients, you know, national brands and things
Yeah.
like that, it's all part of the branding. And
Yeah.
the reason I bring that up is because here in Clark, many years ago, where the ShopRite is on Central Avenue, that used to be a Howard Johnson's, and the Howard Johnson's with the orange roof,
Right,
and
right.
and that architecture was so familiar
Yeah.
for folks that are driving down the Parkway that they saw Howard Johnson's, knew it
Right.
was a safe, clean place to
Correct.
stay. So it was all part of the branding.
Correct.
And that's just one example of probably many here in Clark that
Correct.
you know over the years has been here.
Right. Yeah, that branding. So a lot of these franchises have their own. You know, we did the Cinnabon in Woodbridge Mall,
Sure.
or the Little Caesars Pizza. All of these franchises, they have a certain style, and they have certain standards that we have to go by. We cannot make a McDonald's look like Wendy's.
Yeah, right.
You know,
right.
so they have some standards that we have to comply, and we have to take those standards and utilize in our design to make it look like what it's going to be.
And you know, again, Art, going back to my kind of thought process here, especially again in Union County, where we are based here in Clark, there is so much history.
Right.
You know, it goes back to the 18th century, you know, and so many old buildings and so forth, and trying to keep up with that type of architecture. And again, it fascinates me. My father always says, we watch these different travel programs,
Right.
you know, in Europe and Rome, and even here in the United States. It's like, well, how do they come up with these ideas back in 1750 to build a building this way, or some of these older like the cathedral in Newark has been around for 150, almost 200 years. Like, how did they come up with those kind of things?
Yeah.
And it was just, they didn't have all the modern comforts of what you have now. How do they come up with this stuff? It's just fascinating, the process of all that.
Yeah. And the other thing you have to keep in mind is stay in the time era that you are. You don't want to be 1800s, go back to 1800s. You want to stick architectural styles, and all of that is changing everything is changing all the time, especially technology. So these styles are changing, maybe every 20 years or 30 years, you will see a change in architectural style. So you have to comply with what is today, what is the style, and you're complying. And we always have to think long term. The building is going to last 50 years, 100 years. You're designing not just for a few years, you're designing it for a very long term. Mm-hmm. So, but you start in the current architectural design. You don't want to do an 18th century building. It's not going to be appropriate in today's society.
Sure.
You have to be with the times.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about some of maybe the hotter architect trends now here in 2023. What are you looking at? I mean, are commercial spaces using either more glass now, or are they using more stonework, and obviously greener buildings are kind of at the forefront now. Everyone's trying to be as green as possible, either with solar panels or trying to do some insulation, and so forth, and keeping heat and other methods. So what are some of the hotter trends that you're seeing now in architecture?
A lot of it is everybody is going towards green, net zero. They call it net zero. So what you're spending, you are gaining the same amount. So you're not transmitting, into the atmosphere all those dangerous gases and all that for global warming. And buildings are a major source of carbon emissions. So we have to be very careful to reduce the carbon footprint. And so a lot of the building materials, the systems that we use, they are very energy efficient. We have to keep in mind the energy efficiency. And if we use a lot of glass, then we have to make sure it's an insulated glass. There are tints available. You have to tint the glass so there is not so much solar gain into the building. It depends on the type of the building. So some buildings have a lot of glass. Some buildings require more of brick and stucco, depending on the style. So, but in each case, that energy efficiency is very important, and that's trending. We are trying to. I think when I attended the AIA, American Institute of Architects conference, so that is their goal in the next several years, to become net zero. So we are not transmitting to the atmosphere all the dangerous gases.
Yeah, and I'm sure you probably keep up, you and the firm here keep up with all the latest technologies. That things are changing so fast, either in the way glass is designed or the way stone is cut, wood and so forth. So technology also comes into play with what you're doing as far as how to shape a building.
That's why we are required. American Institute of Architects requires us to have a certain credits every year. We have to take continuing education units, and different states have different requirements, but AIA has, I believe, 18 credits that we have to take. So I go to the conferences, the national conferences every year, and in about three days we have so many seminars that we pick up those CUs, but otherwise also we can do that. But they want us to be up to date all the time. You have to stay up to date with the latest technology, the latest materials, what's happening. We cannot go backwards, and we have to keep up with the time. So it's very important. the American Institute of Architects makes sure that you do that. You know, so
Sure, yeah, to keep up, keep up on everything and make sure you're up on the latest trends. Okay,
Yeah.
PK. So we've spoken about commercial properties. Let's talk about residential properties. Talk to me about how that process would get started. So I'm at my house. I'm going to design a second floor. How does that all get started? I come into your office. What are the first things that you again ask me? Is it the wish list again, like what I'm looking for?
Yeah, again, it's the wish list.
Yeah.
That's the basic thing. We want to know what you're looking to do, you know, and so once we know that, we do an initial consultation. We go to the site and you know, ask the see what the situation is, what the house looks like, what is the condition, and what they cannot do. But then we have to look, we always ask them for a survey of the property. A survey shows the plot lines and where the house is located. It shows the setbacks, the front, side, back. It shows you the dimensions, everything. So this way we know what is existing, and then we look at the zone, what zone this particular property is. And for each zone there are certain requirements. You are supposed to keep so much floor area ratio, so much building coverage, so much impervious coverage, setbacks, height. Every zone has its requirements. So we do an analysis, and then we let the owner know that based on what you want to do, yes, it's possible or it's not possible. Sometimes we have to charge a fee for that. Sometimes we don't, depending on the complexity of it. And so once we have the zoning resolved, then we get into, we have to measure the house. Because without measuring, without knowing what is existing, we cannot design the house. So we measure the whole house, in all the floors, inside, outside, depending on the scope of the work. And we put it on the computer, then start doing the designing based on the requirements, go back and forth with them so they're happy with the design. And once they're finalized the design, then we'd start the construction drawings. It can include foundation plans, architectural, electrical, plumbing, energy code. We have to do energy code calculations. There is a software online called ResCheck, residential check. It's the energy code requirement. So we have to put in values for how much insulation in the walls, how much in the attic, how much in the foundations, in the floors. We have to add all that information in the software, and it calculates and tells you you pass the code or you do not pass the code. So that is part of the building permit. So we do all of that. Then, like I said, we do all the construction drawings, and once all of that gets done, it's the same process. They pick up a contractor, take our drawings, and go back to the building department, apply for a building permit.
So there's a lot of steps involved in that.
Yes.
If you're a regular reviewer of our zoning board or planning board meetings, you'll see folks come up and either for variances and things like that, and they're working off of the information that PK and his team here at PK Architecture will come up with to give you the proper information to ask for those variances, because a lot of times you need those because you're either going to expand the building too close to the property line, to your neighbor's line, and trying to get all that information is key.
But variance is only if you do not stick within the zoning requirements.
Okay.
If you are doing more, if you want to build more than what the zone allows you to do, then you go for a variance. Otherwise you just go to do the building construction drawings and submit.
So now all these wonderful, buildings that you see in these pictures that are behind us in your office, and I really consider you and your team, your artists. I mean, each one of these is almost like a canvas. A lot of folks are painters, watercolors, or oils and so forth, and they'll go out and out to a park and paint. How do you come up with your inspiration as far as to do each building? I mean, what really hits you? Do you kind of gravitate a little bit towards a certain style of architecture for most of your projects, or again, is it a blank canvas when your client comes in and I'm going to try to make this building look like this. These are some of the other. This is just some designs and some other things that are inspirations. But like I mentioned, the painter that may be going out to the park and painting something.
Right. No, like I said, it's a blank canvas, but then we have to go with their wish list. We have to comply with what it should look like. If it's a hospital, like we discussed, and we have to stick with the building code requirements, all the technical requirements, and we have to work with all the floors need to work together. You can't design, okay, I'm designing the second floor, now I'm going to go to the third floor. You can't do that. All the floors have to work together. So one floor affects the other and affects the other, and not only that, the inside affects the outside. So you want to make it look nice, but your lobby may be crooked, maybe on one side. So not only just all the floors have to work together, the inside outside have to work together. For example, there is a dictum in architecture. It says, form follows function. Form follows function. So first you work out the plan. If your plan doesn't work, making a pretty picture is not going to do anything. So you make sure your plan is working well. Your lobby is in the right area, this and that. But you have to keep in the back of your head that if my lobby is crooked over here, how is my front going to look like?
Right,
if it's not centered, if it's not symmetrical, putting my lobby, in a corner, it's not right. So you have to keep in the back of your head a lot of things. All the floors, the inside, outside, how everything is going to work, and it comes with experience. After 35 years doing this. So it comes with experience and working day and night because it's my passion.
Right. So
it comes, then you develop a certain expertise that you are able to pick up what a newcomer cannot. That's in every profession. You develop with experience.
So in your 35 years of experience, PK, I noticed a lot of awards in this office. From the AIA. Tell us about that and how you've been recognized nationally around the world or wherever, however large that the organization is. I mean, there's a lot of awards here, and again, these wonderful buildings and these wonderful structures.
Well, based on all these projects we have done throughout the state, we've got local, regional, state, national, international design awards, and a lot of you will see my pictures with the mayors of several towns. We got a lot of commendations from them. We got 7 years in a row from houzz.com, HOUZZ.com. If you go there, that's only 3% of the top in the country. They get those kind of awards. So we got 7 years in a row those kind of awards. One of the state senators, he recommended us to the assembly and the state senate. They gave us a very nice certificate over there for excellence in design work. So we are recognized by the state, and Commander George Lisicki, we did a Lisicki Apartments in Carteret. So it was a rundown building, and we made it state of the art with solar panels and everything. And it was a veterans apartment. So the veterans coming from Iraq War, there was federal funding, and they gave them at a cheap price, but they gave them a state of the art. And we made such a nice building out of a dilapidated building. And Commander George Lisicki, he was the former commander-in-chief of U.S. Veterans of Foreign Wars, very close to President Bush and Obama. He lives in Carteret. He's a resident of Carteret. So it was named after him. And he gave us special commendation, and he's now a friend of ours after so long.
Wonderful.
So we got a lot of awards, and but again, we don't say no to small projects. We don't, we're doing everything from small to high end products. but we specialize in medical offices and high-end residential, and we do both commercial, residential kind of works. And but anyway, we can help. If I can give you the
Sure.
the
Yeah.
website.
How can people get in touch with you if they'd
Yeah.
like to?
So our website is www.pkarchitecturellc.com, www.pkarchitecturellc.com, and our mobile number, can I
Sure.
do that? 848-250-9686, and email is pkumararch@gmail.com, pkumararch@gmail.com. So anyway, we can help. We are ready to be of service. We always give back to the community. It's not just for us. You know, we have supported the community. The Girl Scouts, this has been a while ago. The Girl Scouts, you will see some pictures. They came to us that the Girl Scouts want to get some education, give them some direction as to how to get into architecture or engineering. We did a whole life-size sculpture of a space shuttle. We we did. I spent all my money to get the material. Then what they did was we did a skeleton out of all the wires and all of that, and we had asteroids floating around,
Nice.
and then they covered it with the Girl Scout cookie boxes.
Oh,
you know,
wonderful. Fun.
so it was like a very nice life-size model of the space shuttle, and it was shown in Woodbridge Mall. Then they took it to other places and showed it there. So they were excited, and then we did a construction. It's like. What was that? Rowan University. They had American Institute of Architects had. They make giant sculptures out of food cans. And after the sculptures are they evaluated. We got awards. They give you awards for different categories, and we did on the Twin Towers. Because when the World Trade Center was damaged, so we did like a tribute to the World Trade Center, and you will see we made cans. We spent a lot of money to get cans, food cans, made sculpture out of the Twin Towers, and with the Liberty Statue of Liberty kind of colors. So we got an award for that.
Wonderful.
And then after that, the food gets donated to the
local food
to
banks.
the
and
local
things,
food banks, and other charity stuff. For the homeless people, we did a lot of stuff. So we are not just for us. We are part of the community. We like to give back to the community as well.
Okay. So PK, if some of our younger viewers who are watching this piece want to become an architect, what was some advice that you would give students and children that are looking at this saying, I'm interested in design, I think I'm fairly creative. What are some of the steps, what would they need to study in college and so forth? How do they get into architecture?
Obviously, the School of Architecture is a 5-year course, So when I applied, I did my bachelor's and master's from University of Oklahoma. So you have to, once you get your bachelor's, you obviously apply to different colleges wherever you get accepted. I don't know. So once you get accepted, you spend those 5 hours for bachelor's, and then another 2 years. 5 years for bachelor's and 2 years for a master's program, if you have to become masters. But after B.Arch, you are ready to become an architect. So then after the B.Arch, you have to get some experience with the professional architect. So you need a certain number of credits. I think it's 300 hours of work. No, I'm sorry, 300 is very little. I don't remember, but they can check the NCARB, which is National Council of Architectural Registration Boards. NCARB has all those requirements, how many hours of experience you need. So you have to work with an architect, and the architect has to give you a certificate, yes, you worked for so many hours. Then you're ready to apply for ARE exam, which is Architect Registration Exam. So you know, it has, these days it's 6 parts. In our times there were 7 parts, and we used to draw by hand. But then right after that, it got converted into the computers
Yeah.
after that, and so now everything is on computer. So you have to get familiar with their software, how to do that, and so you have to pass those six sections. I don't know what they are now. In our times, it used to be structural, building design, some life safety. I forget all the sections, but that was like 25 years ago. So you have to pass those sections, and after that you become a registered architect in the state where you have taken the exam.
Sure.
So once you become a registered architect, then you can apply to become American Institute of Architects, a member of American Institute of Architects. But you are ready to practice architecture after you become a registered architect. So it's a long process, you know, and but you really have to love the profession. You know, it's a lot of slogging day and night, a lot of all-nighters we have to put in. You know, so you really have to love the profession.
You've got to have that passion for it, and you know, very much like what Bill and I have for TV. You've got the passion for architecture, and that's what you need pretty much for everything that you're going to do. If you're passionate about it and it's not a job, then that's, you know, that's where you need to be. So PK, give us the information again where folks can get in touch with you.
Yeah, sure. Our website is www.pkarchitecturellc.com. Mobile is 848-250-9686, only because I'm out here and there all the time. And email is pkumararch@gmail.com. So pkumararch@gmail.com.
Great. Well, PK from PK Architecture, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an enlightening conversation, and it's wonderful to hear everything there is to know about architecture, and we thank you so much for coming on.
Very nice of you to give us an opportunity, and also to serve the community. You know?
Wonderful.
Yeah,
well, thank you so much, PK from PK Architecture.
Thank you.
I'm Don Smith for Clark TV 36 and R. Clark Media. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.